Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your back channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the effects of mass migration on the West. Now, we need to keep in mind that this mass migration is only happening from the third world to the first world. There's no mass migration happening of people wanting to go to China or North Korea or wanting to go to Africa or anything like that. It's only third world illiterate peasants wanting to come to the West and being assisted to the nth degree by the globalists through the United Nations and various politically active NGO organisations, which are part of the globalist framework anyway. And on top of that, Western governments who are all owned and run and administered and directed by the globalists, they're all puppets, are of course welcoming this and again aiding and abetting and assisting the mass migration to the West. Now, it's in the Western government's interest to tell as many lies as they can, and they're certainly doing that. It's an endless barrage of lies, which they can do because they control the entire media, or the globalists control the entire media. If there was a free and independent media, these puppet governments would be torn to pieces and all their lies would be exposed. But that's not the case at the moment. I'm just going to give a few perspectives here of the effects of mass migration, the way it changes a country and a community and a city. Now, Sydney, nearly 20% of the entire population of Australia lives in Sydney, so there's probably going to be an overrepresentation of migrants and immigrants, whether they be from the third world or anywhere else. There'll be an overrepresentation of those people in the biggest cities, and Sydney is the biggest city. So if you take the greater Sydney area, it's close to say 25% of the total population of Australia. But anyway, let's just have a look at a few of the things. Now, I took today, and I don't often take public transport, so although in the last few months I've taken it more often than I usually do. So it's not a long journey, but I'm on the train, and on every and I took a few trains, but on every carriage I was in, on every train I was in, I was either the only white guy in the carriage, or there was maybe one other white person, typically an elderly person. So it was, I guess it was evenly split between, well, not evenly split, I'd say 70% were Chinese, 20% were from the subcontinent, Indian, Pakistani, so on. And then, a various mix of the rest, Arabs and whatever for the rest. So that's the and that didn't really change. But on every train I was on, and by the way, every train station that the train stopped at along the way was 90% plus non-white. So now the government tells us that slightly less than a third of the population is made up of non-white people. That's an outrageous, disgusting, grotesque untruth. I'd say already that 50% of the population or greater is Chinese and Indian and so on. So, but the government for some reason wants to hide that, and the globalist instructions to all the puppet governments across the West is to play down the amount of migrants. Just pretend that if you think there's more than just an odd few here and there, if you think that and you're white, then you're a damn fucking Hitler, racist, Nazi, bigot, fascist, and you're into conspiracy theories. So that's the way they sort of come back. They call you names and just claim that you're crazy. But the reality, of course, is quite different. Now, in one area that's close to a reasonably Chinese intensive area, and I'll just sort of go. I just made a few notes here. I took an elderly relative to one of the medical centres, and apart from the fact that now I speak passable Mandarin, so I can kind of get by, but and I can also listen to what's being said around me and that thing. But the waiting room had my relative and me were the only white folks there. The rest were again nearly all Chinese, with a few Indians and others thrown in. The people working on the desk, the medical centre has been bought out by an Indian multinational, so they as soon as the Indian companies buy it out, they get rid of all the white folks and just install Indians there. So it's interesting watching an Indian who's recently come out to Australia with a very thick Indian accent, who probably doesn't talk English at home. I'm trying to talk to a Chinese person who barely speaks in English. It's an interesting exercise to watch. But anyway, just looking at that, and a few things that struck me was the amount of congenitally handicapped people that there were in the waiting room. These are people who didn't fall over and break their leg yesterday or something like that. They were born with terrible deformities, and somehow they're in Australia, in a Western country, getting taxpayer-funded medical care. Now, again, I can listen to them talking, which others can't, but I can listen to them talking amongst themselves, and they bring out, the Chinese are particularly bad for this, but others too, bring out all their relatives who are handicapped for the free. Now, I don't know why Australia or any Western country would accept them. I just don't understand it. If you're white, you've got to meet very high standards. You've got to be fit, you've got to be healthy, you've got to be qualified, you've got to be this, that. Now, I mean, you really have to jump through serious hurdles if you're white and you want to move to another white country. But if you're a handicapped, illiterate peasant from the third world, who's got no legs or no arms or something, you just get waved on through. How the fuck they do it is beyond me. But and why any Western country would want to do it? But I was intrigued at the amount of people who are born with deformities who are around getting that. Now, I mean, just out of academic interest, I sort of moved to a point where I could get a position where I get a vantage point of the counter, and I could see that they were handing over their Australian Medicare card, and that they were getting the taxpayer-funded benefits. So to do that, they're not only getting medical benefits, but they're also getting government benefits. So the government is paying these handicapped people to come to Australia to get expensive medical care and to get wheelchairs and to get all sorts of other medical attention that they couldn't dream of getting. They couldn't dream of getting in their third world shitholes. And now I'm someone who agrees with migration in the sense of, if people with good English, and I mean good English, not bullshit English, but good English, and internationally recognised qualifications and skills, and they want to come to a Western country, want to come to Australia, I'm all for it. And I'm a well-travelled guy. I've travelled the world doing business, multilingual and everything. I mentioned a number of times before, but I've got no problem with it. I think those people of such superb qualifications, I think they should stay in their third world countries and help that third world country maybe become a first world country or a middle level country. So I think it'd be better for them to not cut and run, but in order to looking out for themselves, if they've got those skills and those abilities and those credentials and they speak good English and they want to come to the West, well, why not? And those skills are needed in Australia. Why not? I've got no problem with that. But why the fuck any government would bring over multiple seriously handicapped people that's going to be very expensive to care for and look after, and then give them free benefits courtesy of the Australian taxpayer? That's got to be the definition of insanity. But here, this waiting room here was chock full of people. Not every one of them was, but the amount of people that were handicapped there, again, third world peasants that didn't speak English, the amount of people that were handicapped was absolutely staggering, and I couldn't believe it. And I don't know why they do it. Now, in the same area, it's got to be the most pharmaceutical intensive area in the fucking universe, this place. Now, the Chinese and the Indians, they don't buy pharmaceuticals for themselves. They buy them for wider families. Now, obviously, they're shipping it overseas, but I don't know how they get away with this. I really don't. They bring in supermarket trolleys and fill them up with prescription pharmaceuticals. And they're standing at the counter handing over, fucking prescriptions that they got from local doctors, by the way, handing them over to the local pharmacy in Sydney, Australia, and they're wheeling out trolley loads. The trolleys are laden. I don't mean there's a couple of things in the trolley. They are fucking laden. So it would remind you of someone that maybe lives out in a rural area and they only go to the supermarket once a month or once a year or something like that, and they buy mountains of stuff. That's how much these trolleys are loaded up with pharmaceuticals. And you listen to them and they're talking, again, I follow the Mandarin, or follow it well enough, that they're talking about sending it off back to China, to the relatives. So I don't know how they're able to do that. How the fuck are they able to do these? It's a scam. It's just a monstrous scam. Again, subsidised by the Australian taxpayer. And you stand there just looking at it, and it's breathtaking. You just can't believe it. Now, again, in that same area, I parked the car some distance off and had a good walk, probably a 10-minute walk to get to where I wanted to get. And I didn't hear English being spoken once in that 10 minutes. And, say I covered kilometre and a half or something like that. I walked quite briskly, but I didn't hear English being spoken once, not once. And again, this is Sydney, Australia. So now another thing too, and just looking at this is not necessarily just Australia, but the amount of people, colleagues that I have in business, I still keep in touch with, and we get together and have a coffee, or they come around for dinner, or I go to their place, and so on. The amount of times that they say that they're and these guys are in like the general manager, the vice president, CEO of small medium company. They're in that sort of level of seniority and capability. And these are capable guys. They're not bureaucratic flunkies or anything like that. And they talk about how often now they're being interviewed by young Indian women in HR departments, who are 21 years old. And just arrived in Australia, never had any experience in first world business, and they're interviewing, or part of the interview process, not the only person, but part of the interview process for interviewing a vice president of the company. And they've still got the thick accent, and they're just totally out of their depth. But how often this is happening now, or how the regional Asia Pacific HR head office is in fucking China, and they have to do telephone interviews with people that speak very minimal English for people to be appointed for jobs around, like in Australia or New Zealand or English speaking countries, and how insane that is, and just how unworkable it is. And but also it's a humiliating exercise, having to deal with some snot-nosed Chinese girl that doesn't speak much English, who's been subject in high school to lots of history about how evil and bad white people are, and how it's China's turn to stick it up those evil, naughty, bad whiteys, and that attitude coming across on the phone at what's purporting to be an interview. So those are some of the just a video on some of those observations. But when you look at the reality of it, there's no question white people are being replaced. It's not even a matter for debate, or there's no question of it, and it's going apace. And again, the globalists are imposing their will on the people. This is why there's nothing in this for white people, nothing. And so white people quite clearly don't like it and are resisting. So that's why the globalist talking point right across the Western world is call them all Nazis, call them fascists, call them Hitler, call them names, call them racists, call them bigots, shut them up anyhow, lock them up on some bullshit allegation. So it's all part of the globalist shtick, and as I say, it's going apace. You've been Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.